Like,
I think the digital nomad path is very tiring. Like
I see.
I would recommend kind of doing the longer stays that I have, and then you find a couple places you really like and you set yourself up in them. Like I have storage places or condos, offices. So, I can get in and start working immediately and just move. But just traveling like I did before, it's tiring. I don't know, like it's cool for a bit. You should see the world, like a lot of people think, America is very different than what it really is until they start traveling.
What do
So
you mean?
I do recommend,
Yeah.
like I didn't realize I was living in a police state till I went somewhere else.
Yeah. No,
You
true.
know,
I see it.
I didn't know it. Like at first I was like, oh, we're the best country in the world. Then I move around a bit. I'm like,
hmm
no, not even close.
hmm
Not even close. But, you still, at least you come back and you have like, the reality then. So you can really kind of be like, look, I love parts about this country, but I at least understand, like why, instead of just being brainwashed into like, oh, all these, like, if you watch the news, right, you would think all of the like Middle East or Asia like evil people or something, right?
Sure.
When you watch the
Uh-huh.
news,
Uh-huh.
not even close. Not even close.
That's so funny. Uh-huh. You're
Right?
watching the news? What news do you watch? I don't know.
So I don't watch the news, but when I go to the US
hmm
and I'm even sitting at the airport for 40 minutes, the only things are on either CNN or Fox.
True. It's true. hmm
And you listen to those guys for a minute, like everyone's evil, right? They're always trying to scare people, like this is happening, that happening.
hmm
Like there's been so many times I went to a place and they're like, oh, riots, the country's out of control. I come in, nothing's going on at all, right? Like I'm just like, but America's all worrying about something.
True.
Like even with the pandemic, like, they were, saying like how everyone's out of control. I'm staying in Thailand, like we have no infections. And then America's the one that's got like 6 million, but everyone else is out of control. I'm like, okay, now, you know what I mean? Like it's that type of like this fear thing, like, oh, we got to be careful about everyone. Keep Mexicans out. I'm like, you go to Mexico, it's a beautiful place.
True. It's true. Yeah, it's the media and news and social media, and you just gotta take a break from that. It really is not reality, right? It's like
It's
they're
not, but
saying life is one thing, and it's really not.
but if you don't travel, you become scared of other countries, cultures. And if
Mhm.
you don't have friends from those cultures, which most of middle America doesn't,
Mhm.
they start getting brainwashed. And that's why I think that
Yeah.
traveling is good, right?
Mhm.
Because, like me being in New York,
Uh-huh.
like I already back then I had friends from all these different places, right? So if someone said like, oh, Lebanon, this, I'm like, well, my friend's Lebanese, he's cool.
Mhm.
Like, like it's just,
True.
or like
Mhm.
they would say like, oh, China this. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, I don't like the communist China, but I have friends from China and they're cool. Like we're best friends, like, so, when you start thinking of individually about people then, and like the places you've been, it's like, I understand what you're saying, but most of the people are normal people. They're cool.
Do people think the same with you when you're there? Like, what do you think of this
Actually, for the most
Polish
part, too,
guy?
yeah,
hmm
yeah. Well, most of them think I'm American because even in Poland, they don't think I'm Polish anymore.
hmm
We're too different, too different. Like I was raised in the States, and I don't think the way that Polish people think anymore. So like
What's
we
the
can,
difference between like Polish and your thoughts?
it's a very different mentality
hmm
when you grow up in a communist country that kind of churned into capitalistic than a real capitalistic country that's trying to turn into socialism now.
And that's the United
Right?
States what you're referring to?
Yeah. So it's very different, right? Like the one thing that everyone's trying to run away from and thinks is evil,
hmm
this place is thinking that it's the best thing that's going to save them, even though they've been lucky and, living in a free, so like when I go back, like I'm confused half the time, right? Like I don't want the socialism, but like I do feel, like things like healthcare, like why do we have it tied to a job? Like it just doesn't make any sense to me.
True.
Like when
Fair.
you look at Canada,
hmm
their healthcare is, set up, whatever the way it's set up, but it's still nothing like Poland when we left. It was a different type of socialism. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we left because we had no control over anything. Like it was horrible.
hmm
But, some things are like, a bit of a safety net is okay, I think. you know.
No control over anything. Like, what do you mean? Like you had.
So,
What do you,
so Poland, when we were leaving, was communist and socialist. Okay, so
Okay.
the government was, and you know, some people in America want this, but in Poland, the government controlled your life. They told you what you can eat, how much of it you can eat, what kind of job you can do, where you
Are you
can
being
go.
wait? Are you being serious? So like, what you can eat and stuff? They'll tell you like.
Yeah, when I was growing up, my parents were getting cards from the government, and that's the only thing you can exchange for food because money was worth nothing.
Mm,
And that
I see.
became because of, you know, like when you take the freedom away and people don't want to work anymore, because why am I going to work if everyone else is going to get handouts? Well, if you only have handouts, that's what happens. You know, when other people's money runs out, that's why my parents left. Like you couldn't even become like a taxi driver, which was a decent job back then,
Mm-hmm.
without being in the party and having a hookup in the government and the government allowing you to do it, right? So everything you had to be, you know, the government controlled every aspect of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like my dad went to vote, he told me, they said, oh, we say you're not in this country anymore, because he was going to vote the wrong way. And he's like, what do you mean I'm here? Yeah, in our papers, you're out of the country. Like everything was, you know, so yeah, it was not a good place to be. So,
The
you know,
United States must be like a breath of fresh air after.
it was, but
that.
you know, when I went back and being in such a, when in the 90s, America was, you know, very kind of free in a lot of ways with free speech and everything still. When I went back from that to Poland, it was very different, right? Like they were very, you know, like, I don't know, like you could say like they had a lot of baggage on their shoulders all the time, right? Like, you know, very, you know, and me, I'm like this free American, like we're all good. And it didn't feel the same anymore. Like they said, like, you know, you're not the same. Like we can't really talk with you anymore. Because to me, it's like, of course you can do this. Of course you can do that. You can